Haliu Desd Zekwi, decorated planetary enforcement director, had burned, used and spent every last bridge, favour and bit of influence he had accumulated over his long career. Now he was in his parked hovercar under a particularly large underpass in a rundown part of town on the outskirts of Talvi. Even though it had been a rotation since his escape from compromised enforcement agents, he was still very much on edge. His once pristine Renegade had been made to look like an old, beat-up pile of steaming excrement in record time by a chop shop he had in his back pocket, so to speak. Their operation was a necessary evil for the greater good of Talvi in general. Hal let them operate as they saw fit up to a certain point, and had them report anything involving the flesh trade and narcotics rings above Class 5 that dealt in bulk quantities. He did not care about amounts referred to as satchels or small-time distributors, nor their runners. That responsibility was for the peons of city security forces. Taking another bite out of the cheap grilled sandwich from some big-name fast food chain, he had to admit to himself that the meal was good and had actually met the expectations inspired by the picture on the menu. Taking a long drink from the artificially sweetened and heavily carbonated juice substance, he contemplated his next move. Basic city security. Planetary enforcement agents, elite nor digital, could not track him easily. He had made sure of that. His hovercar was now unable to have any kind of data link, physical nor remote. Those kinds of capabilities had been physically removed, as had any kind of navigational system. His vehicle was as dumb could get, and had become a fully manual device. The only computer systems on board were those needed to run the craft itself. The guys at the shop were quite skilled in their illicit trade. Though he did pay them, it was not in credits, neither physical nor crypto, as the equipment they pulled out had been given to them as compensation instead. As well as all the data that could be scraped out of such guarded systems, there were a lot of people, big time and small marbles, that would pay a lot of money or offers of great favours for planetary enforcement encryption software, let alone the actual equipment to reverse engineer. This one act would set planetary enforcement intelligence gathering capabilities back cycles. Finishing his meal and shoving all the trash into the blue paper bag, then placing the half-full to-go drink into the cup holder in the center console, Hal drove off, already knowing where to go. When he had stolen Warden version 1, he had stumbled across dozens of hidden directories and communications logs. Normally, such things were typical. However, what had been strange about it was that the logs had been between Warden 0 and a premier cybernetics research corporation, one infamously known for shady practices and multitudes of gross ethics violations. Further digging around in those directories had yielded a further gruesome picture. Somehow, the artificial mind had become dangerously obsessed with organic sensate and went about being able to do just that. He saw fragmented, distorted, and out-of-sequence video footage, due to it being deleted and then recovered, he thought. The footage showed a Tuxis male being modified to accompany all sorts of sensitive and complex internal cyberware. None of it looked needed. None of it looked necessary. There would not even be a Tuxis after that much brain matter had been cut out. Pushing the macabre thoughts out of his mind for the time being, he continued to drive. It was not long before he was at his destination. Making sure his Terran slug thrower, Gore's pistol, was secured and on standby, as well as having the reloading cartridges, he exited his hovercar. Wearing plainclothes and not having trimmed nor having tastefully dyed his hair, nor the thick facial whiskers, Hal looked like a totally different Mipops. With the loose athletic wear he had on, he had the look of an older gym rat, especially since he had kept up with his exercise regimen, at least before he had been forced to go on the run. Hal could now fire the Gauss pistol multiple times in rapid succession with only his dominant arm, without losing any kind of accuracy. Though his arm would ache for hours after doing so, however, which he had found out after a test run in a remote location. Opening the trunk of his hovercar, he put on a wide-brimmed sporting hat, go June Claws, and counter-surveillance sunglasses. The sunglasses had small but very dense internal power cells that would provide about an hour's worth of operational runtime. After making sure all of his equipment, which was far less than he was used to, was in working order one last time, Hal locked his hovercar as he strode away. The public parking garage he was in provided the bulk of parking for employees for a premier biomedical research facility. However, it also serviced the surrounding commerce plaza that had sprouted up around the facility's employees, needing a quick bite to eat or to pick up something after their shift on their way back home. Finally out of the huge parking structure, Hal walked casually towards the main Bioservitor Dynamics building. The bright, high noon summer sun did not bother him as much as it did typical MIPOPs, as he had kept up with his hazardous thermal training and subsequent certifications, even though it had not been required of him. "Oi!" a MIPOP's man's voice called out to Hal as he strode along one of the decorative paths. Hal turned to see a middle-aged MIPOPs man with an overly worn-out and faded June Claus hat that bore the newest design on it. He was with a MIPOPs woman, presumably his life partner, and a small child. Once the man had Hal's attention, he held his arms out and curved them in a peculiar manner, as though they were giant claws. He then made a high-pitched screeching noise while moving side to side and making clawing or slashing motions. The man's lady companion looked ready to die on the spot from sheer embarrassment. Hal could only grin and reciprocated the same movements, shrieks and clawing motions. If only my husband could see me now, Hal thought with happy remorse. Go, June Claws! The two of them shouted together, in disconcerting synchronization. The woman looked at the two sporting fans in absolute and utter disbelief. She tried to say something, but was further thrown into a strange kind of mental dissonance, as the two of them performed some kind of secret handshake that had the peculiar look of being practiced or choreographed, culminating in a shriek and finally another shout. Go, June Claws! Come along, Poover. Your father has finally lost what little of his mind he had left, the MIPOPs woman said with shock and distaste to the child, as she took the kid's hand and left the two lunatics. Hal and the man laughed a bit as they smiled, and the man said, Journals, class of 94. Hal, 79. Hal said, as he greeted a fellow alumni from the prestigious Svavlu Institute of Technology, home of the June Claws. The sports team, despite hailing from a school known for its cutting-edge academia, was a powerhouse as well. It was quite rare for the team not to make it to the semi-finals. That was a great year, Generals exclaimed. Almost half the team went pro. I knew people that did, Hal said, a little of his former enthusiasm diminishing. He had not been quite good enough to get drafted, not even as a bottom-tier choice. That failure, however, had emboldened him to enter into enforcement and then subsequently meet his husband at some kind of gala-esque fundraiser event. That must have been so cool, the man said, then sighed and added, Well, it's been fun, but I have to go find out where my wife and kid ran off to. Maybe I'll see you around. You just might, Hal said, in an odd tone of voice. Janos seemed to sense something was off, and said to Hal in a more serious tone, Hey, Hal, I'll spot you a round or two over yonder at the long call when the June Claws play next. Do what you will with that. Maybe come clean with... whatever? Not all us young folk disregard their elders, right? Janos had gestured to a sports bar and grill not too far from where they were currently standing. Hal thought about it, then smiled. I'll see you there in the championship game, regardless of who's playing. See you there, Janos said, his tone a little quieter. Go, June Claws, Hal said again, as he turned to leave. Go, June Claws. Finally parting ways, Hal actually considered going to the sports bar, assuming he was still alive, no longer on the run, and not in jail. He hoped his husband would go too. That man was most certainly not a sports fan like he was. When all this is over, Hal said aloud to himself as he walked, we're going to take a long vacation, even if all we do is get fat at home, dining on takeout. Finally entering the cool, air-conditioned building, Hal walked past the bored receptionist as though he were an employee. His attire did not put him out of place since it was summer, in the middle of a heatwave, and companies like this had employee lockers. Entering the elevator at the back of the hall, he pressed the button for the lowest possible floor, SL number 4. Hal knew he needed tangible proof, as well as the original metadata to bring to someone outside of enforcement. Neither could he go to his usual veneer breakers, as they would most certainly be watched. That left his options limited to various guilds, and the Senate. Neither boded well. With the guilds, all of them would want something in return, most likely to fill in the resulting power vacuum after he cleaned house. He did not want to have to deal with that kind of problem in the future, so that meant he had to find someone in the Senate. There were a few gems in that flaming excrement pile, or people that put the needs of the populace over the wants of various special interests, but he would have to approach those few quite carefully. Putting those thoughts to the side for now, Hal arrived on sub-level 4 and exited the elevator. The sunglasses he wore were working, and forwarded the automated facial recognition software, but he knew it was only giving him borrowed time. Those systems would eventually flag him for in-person security, after it had failed to accurately scan his face, though the hat helped minorly in this regard as well. He needed to access a primary archival server room before that happened. "Hey!" a masculine voice called out. "You can't be down here!" The voice revealed itself to belong to a Grendel man. He was wearing a company uniform, and a nameplate was quite visible. "Finally," Hal said, adopting a perfect Surfer Beach bum accent. "Man, I've been so lost. I hope you're the boss man." The Grendel seemed taken aback by the question from Hal for a moment, then asked, "Where's your badge or visitor's pass? You were supposed to have gotten one before even leaving the lobby." "That receptionist woman?" Hal said, straight up lying through his teeth with practiced ease. "The one with the get me your manager hairdo and the bad, obvious top-heavy augmentations, man?" "I wouldn't have used those words," the man said, "but I know who you're talking about." "Well, she buzzed me in. Too busy on her phone, man." "Figures," the man said, with what passed as a heavy sigh for his species. "Right, man," Hal said, already having read the nameplate during the interaction. "Anyways, I'm looking for a Mr. Sprosmill." "That's me." "Awesome, boss man." "Man," Hal said again, his impeccable accent having quite the calm and laid-back tone. "So, no foul, boss man?" "No foul," Sprosmill said. "Let's get you a proper badge, all right?" There were a few options open to Hal, even now, as he conversed with Mr. Sprosmill. As he was against the clock, and going back to the reception lobby was out of the question, he dropped the act as the two rounded the corner of the hallway, leading out into a T-junction. "Sorry," Hal said. No trace of his previous accent detectable. Since Halu Dest Zekwi had gone through numerous and quite detailed and thorough hand-to-hand classes for offensive and defensive techniques, both on his own and those that were required for his position, as well as maintaining such training, the Grendel stood no chance. Hal performed a quick and almost lethal sucker punch, down and a little to the left of what could be considered the sternum. The brutal blow hit the man's diaphragm, as well as his pancreas analog. Sprosmill could not do a thing. The air in his lungs had been forcibly expelled, and the blow to his pancreas had left him seeing stars as well as being nauseous with pain. Had that have been all that had happened, he may have been able to mount some kind of defense against Hal, however meekly that might have been. Hal did not show mercy. The moment his sucker punch had connected, he grabbed the Grendel's head and slammed it hard into his left knee 3 times. Each hit echoed in the empty hallway slightly with a dull crack, rendering the Overseer fully unconscious from both pain and a likely concussion. Overseer Sprosmill would most assuredly live, but hate life for the next several rotations. Stripping the man of his badge and keys after stuffing Sprosmill into a sanitation equipment storage closet, he made sure the door was locked and overridden. Pausing before going further, Hal rubbed his throbbing knee. Sprosmill's head had been sturdier than he had anticipated. "I'm getting too old for this shit," Hal said, as he stretched out his knee one last time before going on. He needed to find one of the primary archival server rooms. He needed to do so fast. Reaching into a side pocket, he pulled out a piece of actual paper, one with a hexagon grid pre-printed onto it. Unfolding it gently, Hal studied the hand-drawn map to scale, carefully as he trekked through the facility. Looking at his clockwork, fully analog wristwatch, he estimated that he had 39 minutes remaining until his sunglasses ran out of power. Managing to find the server room in question without much fuss, he gazed at the racks of computer systems and equipment. The server racks had ample space between them, so that technicians or workers could easily access or replace damaged components, as well as being numbered for quick reference. The black deal Hal had made with a code slicer gave him a way to quickly search and download what he needed. However, the code slicer, a Yomdera man, going by the moniker of Biggest Fishist, or more commonly Big Fish, had such skill that no one actually wanted to imprison or kill him. Hal knew even the syndicates had, very begrudgingly, allowed him a kind of don't ask, don't tell kind of informal free rein to do whatever the hell he wanted. Hal's payment for his impeccable map had been to install an insidiously subtle backdoor command line sequence. While he had gone to a university for technology, the specifics of how it worked remained elusive. He did not ask why, nor would he be able to tell anyone about what he did to get the records. It would take Bioservitor Dynamics a decacycle to find the back door. Looking through the directories and not quite having the time to actually look at anything, Hal mass downloaded huge segments of information onto the connected ultra-high capacity data cube. Working against the clock and thoroughly engrossed in his task, Hal did not see nor hear the door quietly open. Despite all of his precautions, nothing could account for simple bad luck. A security guard, one that took his job far too seriously, or perhaps stuck to the corporate guidebook a little too ardently, had quietly opened the door to the server archival room. "Who are you and what are you doing?" the Nimian man asked harshly, almost barking out the question as an order. Taken aback, Hal adopted his previous water sport beach bum persona. "Can't you see I'm working here, man?" The security guard scrutinized Hal a bit and then said, "There's no scheduled maintenance for this room. You're coming with me." The Nimian moved to grab Hal, and the older man moved out of the way, reflexively knocking the hand out of the way with skill rather than strength with his own. "Now you're really coming with me," the guard said, as he moved towards Hal with both speed and intent. Dodging with finesse, Hal studied the movements of the man before him. Perhaps in the peak of his physical prime, he could have physically contended with the bruiser of a guard. Now, however, Hal had to use every skill and trick in the book he had. His full spherical field of vision gave him a certain awareness of the server room. It let him dodge, duck and weave without getting stuck or pinned down into a wall or corner. Most of his focus wasn't analysing the Nimian's attack pattern. It was an instinctual habit for their race, moving their forearms in a kind of repeating sequence. With proper and lengthy training, it could be overcome. Only a professional could reach or counter such a high standard. Halyu Desd Zekwi was one such person, and professionals had standards. Duck, sidestep, left, twist, backstep. Hal repeated in his mind, as he moved with precision, wasting very little movement. The second the pattern from the Nimian repeated, Hal countered. It was just as brutal, quick, and efficient as his fluid movements. He moved right up to the guard, pushing his body way past its limit to make each hit barbarically cruel. Thwack! 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 Hal's fists flew in a flurry, hitting each of the Nimian's arms in the dead center of the Jushaj nerve bundles, located on the underside of what would be considered the humerus. Each arm became nothing more than a floppy, dangling length of flesh and bones that burned with pervasive, cloying pain and searing numbness. Hal's assault was not yet over. "Oof!" was the only thing that could escape the guard's mouth, as his body could barely cope with the pain in his arms, as Hal's foot kicked him in the groin. He fell forwards onto his knees, and could not even cradle the badly bruised and rapidly swelling orbs of flesh between his legs. As he looked up at Hal, The only thing he could see was a Terran slug thrower of some design, pointed directly at his face. Panting from exertion and covered in sweat, Hal managed to say to the guard between heaving breaths, "You're messing with shit far above your pay grade. If you know what's good for you, you'll change my appearance in your report. May Quinn have mercy on you if you don't, because I fucking won't." Terran expletives had a certain charm to them that transcended both language and culture. The guard could only whimper in assent. "I'm too old for this shit," Hal said, repeating his mantra again as he went back to check on the mass download. He did not have the time needed to do a kind of pre-selection, and nearly 15 minutes later the data cube was full. Putting the data cube into his pocket, he entered a quick command line through the newly installed backdoor program so that Biggest Fishest could do all the cleanup work. At the door, Hal said to the miserable heap of a Nimian on the floor, "I left one of your co-workers in a sanitation closet. See to it that he gets medical attention. I'm fairly certain I gave him a severe concussion. I'm a professional, not a monster. Professionals have standards." Quickly leaving the server room, he entered the main elevator without any further delays. Glancing at his watch, he smiled. He still had 25 minutes of runtime with his sunglasses. He noticed the same receptionist was at the desk, and was still perusing her communication device. Even getting to his hovercar was a simple and straightforward affair. Hal drove off casually, with none the wiser, as he heard sirens and emergency vehicles head towards Bioservitor Dynamics. "How are you two holding up?" Selina asked her two bodyguards as she piloted Ornok's hovercar. Ornok answered first. He was stretched out fully in the back seat, his legs and tail behind Nuo, who had his seat nearly fully reclined backwards. "Like I need to go on one of Gur's famous benders," the Daishin said. "Nat Nimian was tough as stones." "Slick as snot too," Nuo added. "I'm not looking forward to regrowing all my lost scales." "Don't remind me," Ornok agreed. "The itching is the worst." "Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Maybe an ex-lover, though," Nuo said. "That's cold, even for you," Ornok said with a bit of a laugh. "Bad breakup?" "The worst. Worse than the coming itching." "Rutek never complained about any itching when his scales were healing," Selina said, not sure if the two were exaggerating or in on some joke she was not a part of. "He's an outlier," Nuo said. "You can't compare us to that Ironhide. Totally unnatural. Definitely unnatural." "That's my boyfriend you two were talking about." Selina let the implied threat hang in the air. "We mean it in a respectable way," Ornok said, diffusing the tense air a bit. "The most respectful." "Really?" Ornok said again. "To quote you Terrans, he's just built different. In a long bygone era, I'm damn certain he would have been a chief." "You guys aren't just saying that, are you?" Selina asked honestly. "Not at all," Nuo replied right off the bat. "Would I lie to you?" "Yes," Selina and Ornok both said at the same time. "I hate you both," Nuo simply states after a moment or two. "Respectfully?" Ornok asked. "Most respectfully," Nuo amended. "Why is Rutek even friends with you two?" Selina asked, a little exasperated at the two of them. "We respect him," Ornok said, with what passed as a wiry grin. "Up mostly so," Nuo said, mirroring Ornok. "Ugh," Selina said rhetorically. "Why did I even ask?" "You value our opinions and beliefs, that's why," Ornok said. "I dare say I even respect your opinions and beliefs," Selina said, catching on a bit. "Ha!" Nuo nearly exclaimed. "She's starting to get it." "Rutek does have good taste," Ornok simply stated. "The best," Nuo declared, echoing Ornok. "Respectfully so?" Selina tentatively asked. "Respectfully indeed," Ornok and Nuo said at the same time. After a moment or so of peaceful silence, Nuo asked, "So, where are we taking our special guest?" Selina's mood turned serious. At least her previous playful demeanor was no longer present. Then said, "You two have to get real cool with a lot of illegal Rugyuth is coup before I tell you." Without realizing it, she had used a rather foul Dynashin swear phrase, no doubt picked up from Rutek. "You're in it deep, aren't you?" Ornock asked, though it was more of a statement than anything else, especially with how his tone shifted. "You've no idea." "Do you need help getting out?" Ornock asked again, still quite serious. "No, I don't need any help with that," Selina said with a laugh, as she changed lanes, getting out of the way of a particularly slow Sunday driver. She continued, "I'm just on a first-name basis with an actual syndicate leader." "That's about as deep in it as possible," Nuo commented. "Yeah, ever since that ring incident, things have been spiraling out of control," Selina said. "I'm close to a breakthrough in figuring out who's placed that huge price tag on my head, and Bozo there in the trunk is going to really help." "So, what? Are you going to torture him or something?" Ornock asked. "That's an option, yeah," Selina confirmed, "though I'd rather not do that. Torture is a little too unreliable." There was a pause as the two Daishins waited for her to elaborate. "If Dumbass doesn't want to divulge his secrets willingly, I'll just hand him over to the leader. I'm sure he'll find some use out of him, especially after all this trouble he's caused me. I might even owe a favor. It won't be the first time." "You really are deep in it," Nuo commented again, adjusting a bit in his very reclined seat. "Yeah," Selina said. "Rutek knows all about it. Gerd, too." "Now us too. Last as always," Ornock said. "Respectfully last, of course," Selina amended. That got a rise out of both Ornock and Nuo, making them both chuckle a bit. "As to what you said, we're not going to sell you out, unless you do it to us first for some reason," Nuo stated. "Do no wrong but return the claw," Ornock said, using what passed as a saying to live by amongst most Dinoshins. "Good adage," Selina said. "To answer your original question, I'm going to a safe house I've been told to go to in case of an emergency. At least one for this part of Woklu. We'll see how everything goes after Goik and his bodyguard get there." "Wasn't he in court not that long ago over syndicate accusations?" Nuo asked. "Yep," Selina said, almost in a chirp. "And he was exonerated of all charges and accusations brought on against him." "That had to have been some good lawyering," Nuo said. "It was. Well, we still have a bit of time before we get there," Selina said matter-of-factly, then asked, "Ornock, can you make sure Dumbass there is still drooling?" "With pleasure," Ornock said with a grin. He then activated a dignitary-grade neural scrambling rod and jammed it quite hard into the side of their hog-tied and maglocked detainee through the opened back center seat. A low, pained groan was the only response. "Done," Ornock replied, after checking the rod and putting it safely next to him. "There's about 8 more charges left in the power cells. Maybe 5 if I crank it up another level." "Should be more than enough," Selina said, as she changed lanes again and turned on a streaming station, Dictum Symphonia. "Like I said, it'll be a while before we get there, so try to get comfortable." "Awesome," Nuo exclaimed, getting out his phone and plugging it into a port on the center console. "I think I can salvage my cards tournament." Despite the heavy and vast spiderweb of cracks all over the glass screen, it still seemed quite functional. The drive to the safe house was quiet and relaxing in a way. The only noise was what was playing on the radio, and Nuo's occasional outburst as he salvaged his ranking in the online league he was playing in, as well as Ornock's soft, purr-like snores from the back seat as he had fallen asleep. The overall trip took only a few hours. Dumbass remained silent during the drive. Unconscious or not remained to be seen. "Guys, we've arrived," Selina said through a yawn as she stretched. She set the hovercar into standby mode as she started to unbuckle the safety restraints. They still felt uncomfortable against her breasts, and figured they always would be. It was midday as Nuo and Ornock got out of the hovercar and looked around, Nuo having dozed off after his tournament ended, coming in top 10,000. They were in the gravel driveway of what looked to be some kind of well-kept farm, ranch, or perhaps what passed as a vineyard. "You sure this is the place?" Nuo asked. "Yeah, I am," Selina answered with certainty. "Goik won't lie to me. He needs me more than I need him." "If you say so," Ornock said, his tone quite skeptical. Someone had been waiting for them under an open-air awning. Rather, a group of someones had been waiting. There were 2 Mipops, both men, a Yomdera woman, and 3 Nimians, 2 men and a woman. They were all talking and joking around, either leaning on the large heavy-duty hover truck in power save mode, or sitting on the edge of the truck bed with their legs hanging over the sides. They did not seem to be wearing any kind of uniform, however. What they had on showed that they were workers or farmhands of some kind. One of the taller, slimmer Nimian men strode over towards them. He was shirtless, but was wearing a kind of heavy overalls, made out of a green denim-esque material that had a layer of dirt and dried mud around the bottom and covering his sturdy boots. "You the VIPs?" he asked, looking the 3 of them over. "You look like shit." "We are, and we feel like shit," Nero said, leaning against the hovercar. "I've got a package for the big boss," Selena said, going off a script she was told to follow by Goik. "We need a place to crash until we can look at it." "Alright, you guys match up," the Nimian man said. "No terror around these parts anyway, let alone a cutie like you. Me all in all." Selena was not even sure what to make of the man. It was not very often that people, Terrans or Xeno, were not put off by her prosthetics. Even fewer thought she was cute with them. "I'm flattered, really," Selena admitted, "but I'm spoken for." "Me too," he said, showing a thick silver bracelet on his lower right arm. "But I call it like it is. Being nice for the sake of it is so rare, it's often considered flirting. People should just be nice, so I'm the change I want to see." "Is it working?" Selena could not help but to ask. "I like to think so," he said. "Anyway, the name's Bird. Over yonder is Cam and Laz. The 2 big guys are Gennon and Ferg, and the 2 ladies are Orsh and Blin." Selena nodded and pointed to her beat-up bodyguards. "Nuo and Ornuk. I'm Selena. Our package is in the trunk. I call him Dumbass." "An apt name," Bird said. "Well, thing at Indigo Fields. It's a farm, sorta. We raise Genha. A rather temperamental herbivore that grows thick coats. Her coats are easily affected by stress, diet and weather, so it's hard to get a good yield out of making them a truly exotic natural fiber, only able to be made small scale. There's some other goods made here, but it's mostly Genza fur products." "Seems cozy enough. There's a few of these places back home in Earth." "Not too shabby," Ornuk said. "Kind of old-timey, or a homestead out on frontier worlds." "Let's get situated then," Selena said. "And get Dumbass put somewhere." Selena opened the trunk of Ornuk's hovercar and pulled the tied-up Nimian out. She let him hit the hard and hot gravel, making him let out a low groan of pain. He managed to look around a bit, squinting his eyes in the bright blue tinted light of the harsh summer sun. He was coherent, though. Selena grabbed him by the scruff of his shirt, pulling him up to her eye level with one arm, showing off the hidden strength of her prosthetic systems. She began to speak to him, in a kind of calm. The sort of icy calm that only an angry and furious woman could muster. "I'd like to think of myself as a reasonable woman," Selena began. "I don't like being shot at, I don't like my friends getting shot at, and most importantly, I don't like murder drones trying to kill me in my sleep. See? Quite reasonable." She paused for dramatic effect, and to let the man process her words. She continued after a moment in that same icy tone and frigid calm. "I'm going to take a shower, eat something, and have a long nap. You have until I wake up to figure out how much you want to spill. Got it? See? Quite reasonable." She let him fall back onto the hot gravel ground, then called out to everyone as she walked towards the group under the awning. "If he tries to escape, rip out the dressage nerves and cauterize the wounds." Such an act would render his arms completely useless, and even with prosthetic devices or internal replacements, the road to recovery would be long and hard if it even happened at all. Selena Rose Thomas was done playing games. She would soon be bringing the fight to them.